let's look at this. Graham Platner, a combat veteran, has spoken openly about his past struggles with PTSD, depression, drinking, and has said his behavior years ago does not reflect who he is today. The Democratic candidate for Senate in Maine could be charming, women said in interviews, but some found his actions intimidating and disturbing. I think the people from Maine believe in him, that he's a fighter, that he is, you know, they think he's their brawler. And I think he can actually, I think he can beat Susan Collins. By the way, 40% of the people who are watching my YouTube are not subscribed. So make sure you hit that sub button. All right. You get all the good gossipy shit and you laugh your ass off and you get a lot of Kermit phone. All right. Now, the thing that bothered me about today's article, guys, we're going to look at this article, but you know what bothered me about this article? A lack of corroboration. Okay. The New York Times put an article about 3 former girlfriends of many. This guy like slept around a bit. 3 former girlfriends, okay, that like said some things. Ooh, but there was no actual physical abuse. There was no graping. There were no black eyes. There was no DV that I saw. The one who claimed there was some sort of like locked her in the room and she just went to bed. Like what, he held on the door for 10 hours? That woman is a fucking Heritage Foundation person, okay? I do not believe her at all. The woman from the Heritage Foundation, a woman from the Project 2025 Heritage Foundation who had a group called Ladies for Kavanaugh, is the one making some claim a week before the primary. And even the New York Times said they talked to her friends and they looked in her messages and found no corroboration. I'm not believing it. I'm not believing it. Okay. I will not believe anyone from the Heritage Foundation ever. These are the same fucking people that say every gay person is a groomer, that are secretly authoring anti-trans legislation and are trying to enact Project 2025. So when that woman says the candidate that Maine loves that's going to take away a Senate seat from the Republicans all of a sudden is like, I don't believe her. Okay? I don't fucking believe her, guys. So now, the thing about this is the bulk of this piece, the claims of like physicality that didn't include hitting or harm, but like supposedly included some physicality, were all from the Fifield woman, okay? And I think we do have to look at this woman, okay? We do have to look at the Fifield woman who is now coming forward with this, because here she is, okay? Here she is.
I will tell you, I'm extraordinarily proud of IWF. It's not well known, but after Jeff Flake got caught in the elevator, a moment I think none of us will ever forget. Absolutely paralyzed by the activist asking him questions and not knowing what to say. We were approached and they said, can you tell us how to talk about supporting Kavanaugh without alienating the Me Too movement? We wrote a memo. It was used by a lot of members of the Senate and the House and Fox News and elsewhere. But most important is Susan Collins told me that without that memo, she could not have seen how to support him. And if you look at her speech that she gave on the Senate floor, it is entirely the playing out and architecture of how we said to structure the argument and what to say and how to say it, which is just so gratifying.
So this is the woman making the claims against Graham Platner a couple years ago, talking how proud she was that she authored the memo that taught Republicans how to support Brett Kavanaugh during his rape accusations without like affecting the Me Too movement. And in fact, Susan Collins was a huge fan of that memo. Okay? This is the woman making all those claims against Graham Platner. That's wild, isn't it? Huh. So this woman who supposedly is saying that she had this problem with a toxic, abusive man, went on to defend Brett Kavanaugh and author some of the talking points to help like Republicans support him without pissing off Me Too. I mean, that seems like relevant, doesn't it? And she was connected to the Heritage Foundation, to Susan Collins, and to Kavanaugh.
You know, there's some serious stuff there I want to go through with you, and I think voters have a right to know about it. And I want to start with what Ms. Fifield says about being rough is the term the Times. And I'm going to just read you the account so you have it. This is from the Times. Mr. Platner could be rough with her, Ms. Fifield said, particularly when they were drinking, leaving her shaken and sometimes afraid. In the interviews, she grappled with how to process her experiences. She was quick to note, he never hit me, he never punched me. She said he regularly grabbed her by the shoulders, sometimes hard enough to leave marks. On one occasion, yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument in which she wanted to stay in the car. During one argument, she recalled he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Eventually, Ms. Fifield said she fell asleep and left the next morning. It hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause any injury. It didn't break my arm. Did that happen?
No, it did not. There are some allegations in this piece that I just want to be kind of unequivocal about are simply not true. Anything alleging physicality, anything alleging that I knew what my tattoo was, these are the statements of someone who's politically motivated. In this piece, there's a lot about my struggling, not being a good boyfriend, certainly self-medicating with alcohol, and I've been very upfront since the beginning of this campaign that was a pretty dark period of my life after I came back from my combat service, and that's what that kind of life looks like. And so there are things in this that I absolutely will take responsibility for and have been speaking about openly for months now. But those serious allegations are just not true.
You did not grab her by the wrist. You did not put your hands on her shoulders. You did not push her into a room that you closed the door on. She's lying about that, is what you're saying.
Yes, that is not true.
You mentioned the tattoo. So I want to talk about that because I think this was troubling to a lot of people, and I think, again, your account of it assuaged some of that fear, clearly in Maine voters, as reflected, again, by reporting and polling. She says, same person, that you referred to the tattoo as 𝗦𝘂𝗽𝗀𝗆𝗆, which is the German word for this particular Nazi symbol. There's other reporting in Jewish Insider in October in which an anonymous acquaintance says you used that same phrase. Did you know what this tattoo was about before last October when you said you first became aware of it?
No, I did not. And I also think it's important to note that it's very likely, and I think that she is that same source. She's the person who's been telling people this from the beginning. And so I feel like, we're kind of rehashing the thing we've been through. I had that tattoo for 17 years. It's a skull and crossbones. I got it with other Marines who I served with in Iraq, in Croatia. And in the time that I had it, I got a security clearance with the State Department. I re-enlisted in the United States Army, where I was screened for gang and hate tattoos. And I took my shirt off in front of my family, many of whom are Jewish. We even released as a campaign a video, which you're putting up on the screen right now, of me dancing at my brother's wedding to his wife, who is Jewish, and her fully extended Jewish family.
See, guys, now, again, like, he's got his shirt off dancing with his brother and his Jewish wife and all of their family with that whatever, like, ink blot tattoo there, and, like, nobody noticed it, right? I mean, you know how Hegseth got flagged for his tattoos when in his military screening. He, like, went back in the military and re-upped, and nobody screened it. You know what I mean? I know it does look like a fucking blob. It is the ugliest fucking tattoo. Like, serious points against this guy for having that tattoo. But again, it's like, if you saw this guy wearing this, walking around, I would have never in a million years known that that was a Nazi symbol. Okay? I wouldn't have. And maybe that means I am just brain dead, or cavalier or whatever. But again, I am not a fucking Nazi. I am not like anti-Semitic. I was in a fucking Jewish fraternity, for Christ's sake. You know what I'm saying? I grew up like deeply embedded in the Jewish religion, even though I'm not Jewish, I don't partake, but like the Jewish religion was always my favorite branch of the Abrahamic religion because they literally didn't shove it down anybody's throats. But whatever, that's my own personal like Abrahamic preferences. But the fact of the matter is that a room full of Jewish family members didn't even know this was a Nazi fucking tattoo. And that's got to amount to something, you know, that's got to amount to something that it is clearly not very obvious. And, you know, I would never get a skull and crossbones because I find that shit garish and predictable. But you know, he's also like, he's like, dude, you think if he had a swastika on his chest, he would have taken his shirt off at the party with the Jewish family? Think about that, guys. If he had a swastika on his chest and he went to his brother's wedding with all of their Jewish family there, you know for a fact he would not have taken his fucking shirt off. Okay? Okay? And yet he went and took it off, was dancing with the whole family, and nobody even noticed this shit. So I think that accounts for something. And let me just tell you guys, okay, you ready? Let me tell you, you know me, you know I am not like AIPAC on the brain, okay? You know I am not. I am like, you know, I realize there's going to be some AIPAC Democrats, yada, yada, yada. I am not one of these people where I'm a hammer and everything is an AIPAC nail. That has not been my way. I am not a like AIPAC on the brain leftist. Okay? I'm not. You know this. I am like in the middle of the road of like, you know, absolutely believing like we need to stop the genocide, but also not thinking that every AIPAC person is like the devil, right? I've been able to sort of see a wide array of like, you know, shades of gray on that. And yet, today, every single person that has come out and has been amplifying the Platner shit has had two things in common. One, there's like MAGAs who are saying he's a Nazi. But you know what the other thing is, guys? Every Democrat that says Platner's got to go, if you go and look at their profiles, you will see that they are like Zionists or deeply pro-Israel. Every pro-Israel Democrat is trying to sink Graham Platner. And that's weird. I mean, maybe they're all like convinced he is a Nazi, but to me, that's weird, guys. That is weird. You know, I will venture to guess that 90% of the people who ever saw that tattoo on Graham Platner's body, nobody had any idea that big, ugly, like melted fucking skull was a Nazi symbol until they got told it by somebody who was like deeply educated about that shit. I could find out I am wrong, but I believe that this shit is, it is feeling like a hit job, okay? It is, guys. It is feeling like the Swift boating stuff. This is what this feels like. Those of you who've been here a while know that I was not a Graham Platner fan, okay? I was not. I didn't like the tattoo. I didn't like the prep school. There were like a lot of things that I didn't like about this guy. I was not a Graham Platner stan by any means at all. I was suspicious of him. I was like, I don't know, very skeptical of him. And I did research on him because of all of the things that I found concerning. And it's really interesting because the more I looked at him, the more I found him to be somebody that seemed genuine and, flawed, like we all are. But here's the thing. You ready? I grew up in a household with an abusive man. Okay? I did. My dad was sexually abusive to my half-sisters. He was physically abusive to all of us, including my mom. I watched him grab her by the neck and slam her against the refrigerator multiple times growing up. I watched him emotionally browbeat her, gaslight her. Okay? I grew up in a house with a woman abuser. Okay? I have, like, my fucking red flags go off when I am around certain people. When 𝗙𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏, when I heard the shit about him, I instantly knew, dude, something is fucking like weird with 𝗙𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏. I could tell by his arrogance, his like, I don't know, I had seen him drunk, right? There were just a number of things about 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗏 that sort of like, when I heard the allegations, I was like, oh yeah, that guy, like, this is gonna stick. But I'm telling you, right? I'm telling you, I don't get that shit from Graham Platner. I do not, okay? The thing about Platner that's weird is when I leaned into the man to explore his shit, and I didn't like the tattoo and all this shit, when I leaned in, the more I leaned in, the more it seemed like, actually, I see this guy as like a deeply flawed and traumatized vet that I think is genuinely like trying to be a better human being. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.